Tell us about your trip.
It's always exciting in D.C., but this year was particularly illuminating. I think in past trips, what you saw is security was at the forefront, but you had other discussions, climate change, people to people, healthcare. But this time, everything is focused on security. The entire apparatus, think tanks, lawmakers, they're all focused around what is national security for the U.S., and now everything is viewed through that prism.
You've been talking a little bit more about what your members are saying. What is their outlook now? I mean, it used to be talking about challenges when it comes to bottom line financials. They're not too upbeat when it comes to the outlook of the Chinese economy. Have sentiment changed in any way in the last few weeks?
In terms of the stimulus?
Maybe the stimulus, election risk, all that too.
The biggest, when you actually look at survey results, particularly from some of the chambers, the top three challenges are geopolitics, particularly the U.S.-China relationship and stability. Second is a slowing economy, and third is domestic competition. To your point, there has been some relief that there is more stimulus now coming, but the next question is, after the holiday, will there be more? For example, will there be a roadmap? The last 25 years, the roadmap was real estate, infrastructure, Disneyland, Starbucks. Are we going to get a more consistent roadmap so businesses know the general directions where to go and we can kind of move forward?
The notion that companies are reducing their footprint. I don't want to use the word pulling out of China, because a lot of these multinationals, while it's been challenging, have maintained their longer-term commitment to the economy. And I'm wondering, where you're seeing a reduced footprint, do you see it coming back? And where do you see it business as usual?
You're right, businesses are not pulling out. What we are seeing, though, is kind of a drive for supply chain resiliency. Some of that means we're going to put our investment into Southeast Asia, into India, into Mexico. Some of it is we're going to do further assessment on the risk potential in our supply chains. For example, when I was in D.C., a huge typhoon hit Shanghai, right, and the city was off for a couple of days. So what does that mean in terms of business? So these are now the strategies, and when you actually talk to people in the U.S. about what is the boardroom discussing, it's where are the risks, where are other investments. We're not pulling out of China, we're hunkering down for a bit. But we do need to assess this, particularly in a new environment in D.C. where security is paramount.
How are they looking at the threat of more tariffs that could come out?
So tariffs in the U.S. policy apparatus is now a feature, not a bug. So we're just going to have tariffs for the foreseeable future. There is some debate as to, after the election, would a Harris administration continue on a similar path, but maybe tweak the tariffs a bit? There's an assumption that a Trump administration would really put on more tariffs and export controls. So the understanding is we're going to have tariffs for the foreseeable future. We just don't know what exactly that looks like until the election happens.
I noticed part of your survey suggests that one of the sectors that's doing well is automotive. And I'm wondering, because people think about tariffs and geopolitics, that's immediately the sector that comes to mind. How is that? Square that circle for us.
So automotive isn't just I'm going to sell a car. It's also the entire ecosystem, right? The supply chain, the build out of the suppliers, the technology, the raw materials, the processing. So if you're involved in those areas in China or in the automotive supply chains, you're really good to go. We're seeing more companies supply, for example, BYD and Tesla. Right? We're seeing more companies supply even beyond China's shores. And so automotive overall as a sector is positive. There are challenges for sure in the end sales, but when we actually look at the ecosystem and supply chains, it's overall positive.
You've brought some props. I've just wanted to maybe to see, there's chocolate, Harris and Trump chocolates that you brought back from the U.S. Why bring this one today, Cameron?
Well, this is kind of a microcosm of, in D.C. anyway, in D.C. gift shops, of how the election's actually running. In the summer, Trump chocolate was taken off, and then the Harris campaign started running, then Harris took off, and now it's very much 50-50. So when I did an informal quiz of the two gift shops I visited last week in D.C., they essentially were selling roughly the same. And so I think overall, this is a microcosm for the election in the U.S. of it really is 50-50 at this point.
How do I need to be thinking about that? What's a sweeter deal for Chinese companies that are looking to the U.S. as a market as well?
I think many Chinese companies think it's just too difficult at the moment. And the reality is, when you're in D.C. and you're talking to policymakers about their concerns, it is security, it's data security, it's how do I know if a Chinese firm comes here that they won't send the information back, right? Kind of the TikTok theme. There's also a great concern of Chinese influence in supply chains and what actually that looks at. What risks are presented for a Chinese company, for example, that's in Mexico, supplying into automotive or even other industries that then flow into the U.S. So at the moment, it's just kind of in the too hard pile to move forward until we have a better roadmap after the election.
Are there misconceptions that you have to push back against?
Oh, many misconceptions. I mean, where does one start? I mean, part of it is that a expanding small yard and ever-growing high fence is actually going to slow down what's happening in China. And the reality is it's not. The other is that tariffs are just a tool. It's not an end game. Part of the discussions, of course, were also on strategy. What is the U.S. actually looking for out of China, or particularly business? In the reality, when you talk about supply chains, Chinese firms are all over the world, right? They're integrated with many different supply chains. And you're not going to stop that. And so we're unsure as to, again, where this is actually going. But those are the concerns out of the U.S.
It seems like, though, from what you saw in your surveys, is that people are thinking that the regulatory environment is actually improving in China. Does it help in terms of bringing back investment? Or do you think the geopolitical tensions are still going to drag on outbound?
Geopolitical will be number one. And, when you really talk to people both in country and even in D.C., those who do want to have better relations, who do want to grow business and maybe do investment, geopolitical is just number one. And I'll give you the example. A couple of weeks ago at a Senate hearing, an Intel executive was really hit upon by Senator Josh Hawley about why, as an Intel executive, why does Intel have investments in China? This is now, again, part of the feature in the U.S. system. U.S. business who is either investing or doing large business in China may be called before Congress to justify it. And no executive wants to be sitting there in that situation. So this is also bringing a chill overall to the business community.